In this video, it's time to turn your 3 layers into an official quilt. I'm Donna and welcome to part 2 of the series on how to turn your quilt top into a quilt. We'll go over hand quilting here, but you can find machine quilting instructions on a separate video. For hand quilting, I use thread, a needle threader, a thimble, and a pair of scissors. Now, what type of thread and needle to use is a matter of personal preference. Just remember that when choosing your thread and needle, the higher the number, the finer the needle or thread. This is 8-weight thread. It's on the thicker side, but I love the look and feel of it, and it shows off your stitches nicely. Before we begin, I like to quilt on a table rather than on a hoop, so that's what I'll be demonstrating here. If you're working on a table, just test your needle on it first to make sure it's not leaving any marks. The first step is threading your needle. The length of your thread will vary depending on your quilt design, but I find that my maximum length to quilt with ease is about 20 inches long. Once it's threaded, tie a quilter's knot. To do this, place the tail end of your thread behind your needle perpendicularly. Now wind the thread around the needle twice, if you're using thicker thread like mine, or 3 times if you're using finer thread. Then, pull the remainder downward, keeping your thumb and forefinger pinched. Pull the needle away with your free hand, keeping your thumb and forefinger together as your thread moves. You'll feel that wound thread turn into a knot as the thread reaches the end. There, we have ourselves a quilter's knot. The next step is to anchor the thread to your project. For this example, I'll be quilting from here to here, using black thread and without a thimble for visual clarity. Now find a location about 1 inch away from where you want to make your first stitch. The goal is to bury the knot inside your quilt. From this point, take your needle through the first 2 layers only, that's the quilt top and the batting. Then go up to the point where you will begin your first stitch. Pull your needle until the knot lands on the surface of your quilt top. With one hand pressed on your quilt, tug your thread until you hear a pop and see the knot disappear. If you have the tail end of the thread sticking out, just snip it off with scissors, and if there's a visible hole, you can just rub it off with your finger until it becomes unnoticeable. Alright, it's quilting time! Slowly start stitching through all 3 layers of your quilt. Notice my other hand is moving the quilt to help weave the needle through those 3 layers. Continue quilting and readjust your quilt as needed to prevent the layers from bunching up. Depending on your comfort level, you might choose to go 1 stitch at a time or do multiple stitches before pulling the needle through. You might also prefer to space your lines closer together or further apart, or create shorter or longer stitch lines than what I'm doing here. It's entirely up to you. Before you make the final stitch, or if you need to change your thread, we need to bury this other end of the thread. To do so, tie a regular knot. Make sure to leave about a 1/4 inch gap between the knot and the surface. Without going past the knot, take your needle through the quilt top and the batting only to make your final stitch. Then, take your needle back up about 1 inch away from your final stitch. Pull your needle until that knot lands on the surface. Once again, with your free hand pressed to the quilt, tug the thread until you hear a pop and see the knot disappear. Snip your thread off as close to the surface as possible, then give that area a slight rub until the hole becomes unnoticeable. And then repeat the previous steps until you're done quilting. Now if you're starting your stitches at the edge of your quilt, there's no need to pop your knot. You'll simply take your needle through the batting and quilt top only and start quilting. If you're ending your stitches at the edge of your quilt, you can either use the pop the knot technique or tie a regular knot while your thread is in the batting. It's your call. If you'd like to try hand quilting, small projects are great for practicing your hand quilting and finding your own style and rhythm. This block is from the Flower Waltz quilt pattern, which you can find at xoxsew.com. Now that we're done quilting, it's ready to be squared up, which is part 3 of this series. In the meantime, please like and subscribe so you don't miss more quick beginner-friendly sewing tutorials. Thanks for watching.